Good morning, India. Welcome to the sixth installment of myLaw's Casual Conversations with Citizens, where I engage with some extraordinary citizens about their lives and their interactions with ideas of law and justice. Over the last 2 months, we have spoken with a musician, a journalist, a philanthropist, a tennis star, and a couple of foodies. Our journey thus far has exposed us to how each of them make choices, channel their expression, populate social media, and reflect on the role of the state. Today, we have a guest who will hopefully walk us further on all these themes. She's a talented, multi award winning actor, poet, writer, and has just embarked on her most challenging role yet, for which you don't have red carpets and statuettes. You just have burps, sleepless nights, and diapers. She and I have one thing in common. Very few people get to pronounce our surnames right. Kalki Koechlin, welcome, and I hope I got the pronunciation right.
Absolutely, you got it perfect. Yours is, I need to look at it, it's so long.
It's Pankara Narayanan.
Yeah. Oh, very good.
So, Kalki, just a quick question on motherhood. How is it treating you, and are you getting the comfort food you want?
Yes, I've been indulging in a lot of cooking because of the lockdown, and I thankfully I have a princess baby who likes to sleep a lot.
How sweet.
My nights have gotten sorted. I'm getting
Yeah.
like 10 hours of sleep at night. First 2 months was hell. I didn't understand how people are doing this all the time. I was
Yeah.
like, how is it even possible to function like this? Every 2 hours, you get up for a feed. It was tough 2 months, but now we're good.
Yeah. Did you have friends who had just become mothers who told you how hard it could be for the initial few weeks? Were you prepared for that?
No. So really, my close core group of friends, I'm the first pioneer in motherhood.
Yeah.
So that's the nice thing is I have everybody, very excited with me and all
Yeah.
there with me. But I do have a sister, a half sister who's had 2 children. So she was my go-to person for all the questions. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So, just to go back a bit, I'm just curious. You spent the first few years in Puducherry, in Pondicherry.
Yeah, I was born in a small village outside Pondi called Periyamudile Chavadi. It's about your last name.
Okay.
And it's a little fishing village between Auroville and Pondi.
Oh yeah, on that road, yeah.
On the beach road.
Yeah, I know that road, yeah.
So I was born in a beautiful house on the beach there, and then I went to boarding school in Ooty because my father was teaching hang gliding in the Nilgiris.
Yeah.
So I went to boarding school nearby, and pretty much stayed in boarding school from the age of 6 till 18.
Okay. So when you were in boarding school and you grew up and you talked about this very often about the kind of identity you have. You've said before that I'm white on the outside, but I have a brown heart and brown on the inside and stuff like that. When did you really become conscious of this identity about how you look? Because for many of us now, Kalki is an Indian. It makes no difference, right?
Yeah.
But growing up for you, it couldn't have been easy, I would imagine. There must have been people who thought, you were a Firang and, how did that...
Yeah. There was, so when I was very young, I think I didn't even have the awareness that I was white. I would sit with my Tamil friends and we would point out the foreigners and be like, that fascination with the white person.
Yeah.
So I had that. So I have those memories. And yet I know that when I started going to school, there was this feeling of like being different. Everyone was very impressed that I spoke Tamil and I was a white person,
Yeah.
I would win hearts like that, like to start speaking in Tamil. But it also went the other way. Like people, as I got older, all my friends and I remember we were in Kovalam on a holiday school trip, and there I got asked for drugs,
Oh.
And I was like 13, 14, but it's like the white girl was getting, asked. And generally the attention, the unwanted male attention on you because you are seen as slightly more loose moraled, with different value systems. So those things, I found myself always having to give that introduction. Yeah, I'm French, but I was born here, and I'm not Tamil face Mudio. This is my automatic thing when I met new people. That I need to give them a backdrop, context.
Yeah. But tell me, one thing I think, even I've been born and brought up in the South, one thing I used to always feel disturbed about is that many of our film industries in Tamil Nadu and in Andhra and in Karnataka used to keep sourcing, actresses from the North and sometimes actresses from abroad or who were of foreign origin, etc., because of this kind of obsession with, being fair and looking a particular way. Have you felt that has changed in any way, at least in the South film industries?
It's hard to say because I'm not so clued in about what's happening now. But of course, I remember that, and I know we would have people who had no knowledge of Tamil,
absolutely,
performing and being dubbed, and I used to be very frustrated because I was like, I can speak Tamil, employ me. But I guess I think it is changing in a very slow manner. I mean, you hear of things like Fair and Lovely dropping the fare. Now I know that comes from the pressure of the people. That doesn't come from them being very kind. I think it comes from the fact that the times are changing and that there's more talk of racism. So I think the process is a slow one. But I don't think fairness has gone in even if it's now more Indian fairness, there's still this concept of fairness being equivalent to beauty.
You've always seemed to be so married to words. Your work with slam poetry, with writing scripts, the kind of films you do, the podcasts you do, etc. And you've recounted, I remember I was, as a lawyer, I have to do lots of research on subjects that I deal with. You're one of those subjects. So I did have to watch lots of shows to figure out what your views are and how you are and your work, and phenomenal film, I must tell you. And I noticed you mentioned somewhere that if you were stranded on a desert island, or if you had to go back in time and cuddle with someone, it would have been Oscar Wilde, but you would prefer Shakespeare. So when did this love story with words start, and how did it start?
It started at a very young age. I know because my mother has kept all of it. When I was very young, 6, 7, 8, I was writing poetry. Very simple rhymes and things. And I've always loved the sound of words. So it's I always, even when I was writing at a young age, I like to make it sound like out loud, I think it was for me also a therapy because being an only child, living in a very isolated place. We lived in a small village called Kalki in the Nilgiris, which is near Ooty. So when I was at home, there was really no one of my age group, and so this was my way of talking to somebody, writing. So I think it was I didn't have a conscious diary like journal, but this was my way of journaling my life. Just putting down different thoughts and playing with words.
Did school play an important role in ensuring or helping you along with literature and language and stuff like that? Are you happy with the way schooling systems deal with language?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm happy with it, but because right now I had a very different experience. I was homeschooling my younger brother. I'll tell you about that. But when I grew up, I really, the English language for me was opened up thanks to an old lady called Miss Grimes, and she was in her 60s, and she was teaching in Hebron, and she she immediately saw that I was very weak in English because I grew up speaking Tamil and French before I spoke English. So she gave me the homework. I remember one summer holiday, we used to have these 2-month holidays where I had to read Great Expectations, and I can't remember which other ones. Oliver Twist, a bunch of classics. And
Yeah.
after I came back from that holiday, I suddenly became very good at English.
Yeah.
Because she made me read so much, and then it just became my favorite subject. And I was exposed to Shakespeare in school. I was exposed to Oscar Wilde. We did have a drama festival every year where we would
Okay.
perform plays. So yeah, so it started. I was very happy with the education I got there, but now actually my little brother who's 12,
Yeah.
we sent him to the same school,
Huh.
and I believe that it's just the requirements. When I was teaching him the last 3 months because of lockdown, I was homeschooling him. I realized that the level of the schooling has just gone down, and this
Okay.
was really kind of disturbing to me. One of the big reasons was because he was typing on his laptop, so he didn't
Okay.
know how to spell because autocorrect spelling for him.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And at 12 years old, you don't know how to spell or do basic grammar because you're constantly on your laptop.
Yeah.
Fixing it for you. So I remember thinking, wow, how can things have changed so much in such a little time? Yeah.
I think one of the things of technology coming in is also, I don't know, I mean, we're a few years apart in age, but, because we've used computers for so long, that when we have to start writing physically, it's again a bit of a task to get back to that. I mean, I fortunately do make notes on my briefs, and also I'm still in touch, but I know friends who are, in the IT sector, management and business, who are not spending that much time composing stuff with their hands. They're doing a lot of it on the computer. So it's handwriting as a skill. Very often when you see people writing now, you just can't understand what they've written because it's alien to them. They've barely ever written. So I worry about that with our kids and stuff. That if they get used to this stuff, you're right. This grammar spelling thing is a subtlety one sometimes overlooks. But apart from that aspect, as far as the schooling is concerned, why did you feel that the education system, at least as far as your brother is concerned, gone down a bit?
Just the level, for his age, the problems that he had to do, and the homework that he was given was extremely simple.
Okay.
So we actually took over. Me and my partner and my elder brother and my dad started teaching online. Because we just felt like he's not. Also, because the school is kind of old-fashioned, so this whole system of online education hasn't quite picked up with them. So they can train. They're training their teachers now, but it hasn't quite picked up in the way that it should have. Considering this is a long-term thing now.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to do that for him. We got an online Hindi teacher for him. We all four of us shared all the subjects, and we started giving him tasks of our own.
Okay.
So I have a feeling this is also because of the pandemic. A school that is more traditional, that, for example, they don't allow their kids, Wi-Fi and internet access.
Yeah.
So now to suddenly switch to a completely online education is tough for them.
Okay.
So that is concerning, and we're very much worried about should our child, should my little brother go to a school, or should we look at a permanent online education now? Because things are so unpredictable, and we don't know how long this is going to last. So we're very much, we're actually in discussion every week. Me and my dad, we have these Zoom calls about all the different solutions.
You see a lot of people now doing homeschooling as a complete alternative, because I think they feel that it's not about grades and it's not about just ticking the boxes, but it's about picking up skill sets. It's actually about learning so many different things. You see in systems abroad that kids learn to do so much with their hands. They learn to commune with nature. Being physically fit is so important. and very often it's something that we don't look at in our education systems at all. But
absolutely. I mean, my younger brother is also in Oroville, where he gets to go horse riding, and part
yeah,
of horse riding is also you have to groom the horses, wash
yeah,
the horses. You know, you have to
absolutely.
take care of them, and so
Yeah,
you start understanding that side also.
yeah,
There is so many aspects, which is what I actually loved about my school when I was growing up, because
yeah,
it had this sort of holistic approach. We used to go camping, we used to do like different activities
yeah.
outside of just academics.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think less and less of that is happening because they don't have permissions. I know there's lots of politics to it too, you know.
Yeah,
Permissions to take your children out into Mudamalai jungle is not
yeah,
what it was before.
yeah, not at all.
Whole
Yeah,
combination of things have changed the education system.
yeah, yeah. Now, when you were coming into films, I mean, you've recounted often about how Anurag did that audition and called you back for Devdi, and I mean, the rest is history, as they say. But I'm just curious, the kind of profiling that we have had earlier in the Hindi film industry of people who have who've been white essentially, who have acted in the film industry in bit roles like Gavin Pickard and Bob Christo, and of course the great Tom Alter. At least Gavin and Bob used to get typecast. They were usually villain roles, and they'd be busy getting beaten up at the end of the movie, but beating people up in the beginning. Now, and I remember Mr. Alter being quite insulted when somebody asked him how he speaks Hindi so well. I mean, for a chap who was a master in Hindi and Urdu, to be asked a question like that, do you think because I mean, that's the impression we get, at least, that you've really broken the mold with that. You're possibly one of the first Indian actors who, notwithstanding the anthropological genes there, you've actually broken out from any mold that people could have cast you in. Do you feel that, or is this just a perception we might have?
No, I definitely think that it's easier for me in terms of the fact that the industry is changing so rapidly right now because of outside money, because of like things like Amazon and Netflix wanting to put in a lot of money. So it's opening up in many different ways, and there's more and more outsiders who are coming in. Technology again, YouTube, and everyone can be their own star, but bring out their own content in today's age. So I think it has been a lucky time for me, and I feel quite privileged to have worked with all kinds of spectrums in Bollywood, from Anurag to Dibakar to somebody like Ayan Mukherjee or Zoya or more commercial. So it's been fun. It's been fun. Yeah.
So when you went to Goldsmiths and you felt that, look, this is a kind of qualification that I need to get for myself, and you came back and did a lot of theater. When we look up Goldsmith's list of notable alumni, it has Steve McQueen, the first black man to win an Oscar for Best Picture for 12 Years a Slave. And it has the great Damien Hirst. And Lucian Freud. And you.
And who, sorry?
And you.
Who's Lucian Freud?
Lucian Freud, the artist. He's Sigmund Freud's, I think, son, grandson. Yeah. So,
and then it was me. I'm there.
And you're listed there, right? So I wanted to ask you about that, Kalki, because you're clearly surprised about this. I want to ask you about fame. When you go into something like films, right, and you start getting success, it's a kind of bargain. I wouldn't call it a Faustian bargain, but it's a bargain that you make, that you're going to go into an arena where your privacy is not really going to be your own, and you are giving a license of a sort, though it's not something that you want to give perhaps, to the public at large, to PAPs, to the press, to start asking you questions which they otherwise wouldn't care about or otherwise would be inappropriate, right?
Right.
So, were you conscious, when was the first time you became conscious of the fact that I'm getting famous, but was it a double-edged sword?
I remember the first time I got really upset with my celebrityhood was when Devdi came out, and somebody, I can't even remember who, wrote some article about how these Russian girls are coming in and taking this industry. Playing,
Okay.
and I got so upset, so mad. I was like, firstly, I'm not Russian.
Yeah.
Secondly, I'm acting as a prostitute,
Yeah.
and 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 yeah, I just found like I found that injustice coming out. Like how can anyone just put something out there without research and not get into trouble for it?
Yeah.
But I think obviously with time, I had to thicken my skin a little bit, and just I just took it with a pinch of salt and stopped actually reading a lot.
Yeah.
That I the media for me, especially in Bollywood, it was bought. I realized that there's a lot of PR behind all of it, and that
Yeah.
most people are buying out that kind of the gossip pages or whatever.
Yeah.
So when I realized that, I actually made a decision to not care too much about it, which is why I didn't have PR for the longest time in my life, as a conscious decision, because I wasn't really there for the celebrityhood. I was there for acting work, and I've made that decision to continue to do theater, to continue to do things as an actor rather than just kind of want to stay in the limelight. There are times where I'm not on social media because I have nothing to say.
Yeah. Yeah. But you were recounting to someone about how you walked down from a friend's house in Marine Drive, I think to Kalagoda or somewhere. Um, how easy is it for you to do it now? I mean, because your anonymity is pretty much gone. You're a recognizable face.
Trains. I really miss being able to use the trains because
Yeah.
you used to be able to get from Versova to Churchgate in 20 minutes on a fast train.
Yeah.
So I miss that freedom. I think that I've just accepted the fact that life has changed completely, especially after films like Ye Jawani and Zindagi Na
Yeah.
Milegi,
Yeah.
family films, So then
Yeah.
everybody
Big commercial cinema. Yeah.
So yeah, I give, it's a given that if I go to a restaurant, I will get photographed or people will ask for selfies. That's a given. Having said that, I can still move around. I go for walks, jogs, cycles all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm I stopped doing the things that I normally do. I think what one good thing is that in your own neighborhood, if you just the more you expose yourself, the more people get bored of you. So especially when they don't see you with makeup and all glamorous. Now they see me in my jogging clothes. They're like, okay. We already got our selfie with this one. So then you're a regular citizen again.
And I think in Bombay, possibly it's a little easier than in other cities where we're not familiar with, Bollywood celebrities walking around.
That's true. That is far more excited to see us.
Yeah.
I get pulled in every direction.
So now coming to something that you've spoken vociferously about and decidedly so over the years, about the rights of women. You've touched upon that issue very, very often. And I wanted to ask you something to link up with a conversation that we had previously with the Carnatic musician T.M. Krishna. Krishna has broken, I think, many barriers when he has come out. If you're familiar with his music, he's broken the idea that traditional Carnatic music is restricted to certain caste groups and has to be performed in a particular manner. He has gone to churches and performed. He has included people from all groups, all communities, all religions, and he's an outstanding musician as well. So in my conversation with him, we threw up an interesting issue that it's something that a former American Supreme Court judge had commented on many years ago, that India does not have a Civil Rights Act. Now, what the Civil Rights Act in the US does is that it protects people in the private sphere from any type of discrimination on the basis of race or religion or caste. Today, we don't have that in India. So, for example, in your own industry, they could choose to discriminate against somebody based on their calling, their faith, where they were born, or even the color of their skin. It's possible today in India. Now, for the largest democracy in the world to have that kind of gaping vacuum is really problematic. So, Krishna and I were talking about how maybe we should try and move towards bringing in such a legislation in India so that people can claim it as an entitlement, because you can't choose a man over a woman just because of gender in a private space, but you can. In India, you can, right? That is a little bit of an interesting history. So if it won't bore you, I'll tell you. When Martin Luther King and there was the March on Washington, and they decided to come out with the Civil Rights Act in '64, the Civil Rights Act was dealing only with the issue primarily of race. It was not talking about gender. Yeah. So there was a Democrat representative who brought up the issue that, hey, we need one amendment that apart from race will bring in the word sex as well, so that you won't have discrimination on that ground of gender. Now, and the bill got passed, and the Civil Rights Act today for the last 60 years has been protecting women in the workplace across the US, and apart from employment, even in education and things like that. Now, in India, our constitution in Article 15 specifically provides that, look, you will not discriminate on the ground of caste or religion or place of birth or gender. But it says, notwithstanding what we have said broadly, it does not prevent the state from making law for ameliorating or promoting women and children. That's the reason why we have the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, which is a legislation targeting and protecting women at the workplace. That's why we have the Domestic Violence Act, which also protects women from domestic violence. These are not available to men. It's only available to women. And of course, we have POCSO, which is to protect children from abuse, etc. The reason for this completely unwarranted tiny little lesson in constitutional law is to ask you whether you think the time has come for us to actually start pushing for a Civil Rights Act which will protect women and ensure there isn't discrimination. You know, this has been discussed widely, both in India and abroad, specifically with reference to your profession, that women don't get paid as much. We've seen it not only here, we've seen it in tennis, we've seen it in many, many arenas, but in acting, you know, it makes absolutely no difference. It's not like the men are lifting something heavier, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on this, I think I've spoken about it, is that absolutely, I think if the law can bring that change first, it would be great. But from what I understand, there are many laws that are not followed till the mindsets are changed. And the mindset here is the heroism of films. And in my industry is the idea that the male is the hero of the film. I've many times been asked, hero kaun hai? When when I have a film.
When you're the hero.
Yeah. So that can only change, I think, with the writing roles for women and writing roles where the woman is the main lead or the hero of the film. And I'm talking in commercial cinema as well, not just in independent cinema. So I feel that when we start writing more roles for women like that, we are automatically going to have an audience that, I mean, the audience will also start changing their mindsets about what it means to be a hero or a heroine. And that is what we need to change, because it's also how our homes are built. How the man is supposed to go out and work and the woman is supposed to be at home, and that's starting to change now. We're seeing women who've been educated, because we've been focusing on women's education. So they're ready to go out and work, but the mentality is still so resistant to that. There's a lot of jealousy. There's a lot of resistance in terms of peer pressure in terms of, how they're treated by male colleagues or by male bosses, and that will change only when we start telling different stories, when we
Yeah.
start telling the women's stories more, I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. No, no.
In terms of a law that does that, absolutely, I think it's very necessary. And when with something like the Me Too situation
Yeah.
that about last year or the year before, was it?
Yeah.
We see that there's a big gap in the law to deal
Yeah.
with such situations. So it's become a sort of a Twitter bash up where everyone just puts out their stories, and then it's about public pressure.
Yeah.
We don't actually know what the laws on these are and what the law can do to bring about change.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. One of the biggest problems, and we grapple with this daily, is the fact that enforcing the law is so difficult. And enforcing the law is motivated, it's selective, and it leaves many people, even with laws which are really supposed to be helpful to us, it leaves many of us chagrined that we couldn't use the law in the manner in which we could. We should be able to. Your own industry is an example of that. The Protection of Women from Sexual Harassment Act defines things like workplace and harassment, and it requires and mandates that all workplaces will necessarily have a sexual harassment policy, and it will have a committee which will address those issues. Now, I've been advising a group who are in the films, and we've grappled with this issue, particularly with reference to film industry, because unlike in the golden era of Hollywood, when Gabo and Gable would be engaged with studios, you're not like that now. So your workplace is really that particular film set where you are at that point of time. Now, who do you pin the responsibility on? Would that be on the producer? Would the producer have an onus to treat that set where you are as a workplace? And could we then implement that law? And a casting couch scenario, right, which people talk about often, it's prior to the employment. So again, it falls in the gap.
Yeah.
It's not when the employment actually commences.
Yeah, we have a floating office situation.
Yeah. So, while you've been in this industry and while you've been in theater as well, there must have been people who have shared their personal experiences about this kind of male domination, the sense of entitlement towards trying to seek sexual favors and stuff like that. Do you feel that the film fraternity has in any way been able to organically develop some way of addressing that?
I think there's just a lot more fear ever since the Me Too has happened here. So people are much more, I would say, walking on eggshells about anything to do with anything that could be interpreted as sexual harassment. So I saw changes, for example, where I did a play and I was given a document to talk about, because the play involves a scene where we're doing a rape scene.
Yeah.
So we had to read this document and understand it and sort of sign it and say, okay, every day, these are the consent things that we need to go through. And we need to ask the other actor if they're comfortable with this before we go ahead and do anything. So it was a daily exercise. If we worked on that scene, we would ask each other, is it okay to do this? Okay, let's go.
Okay.
So that's something that I didn't hear of beforehand,
Yeah, absolutely. That's progressive.
Even recently with Sacred Games, we had a nudity scene and we were talked to by the writers beforehand to ask what we're comfortable with. It was planned. Whereas before it was like, oh, the kissing scene, the sex scene, the intimate scene, we just don't want to look at it and we don't think about it. It's like an action scene. You're not going to practice. You're not going to jump into an action scene with
obviously.
You're not going to punch someone in the face.
Yeah.
You're going to practice that choreography really well so that when you shoot it, you know what you're doing. And you hurt the other person. So in that sense, I think that's also starting to happen for intimate scenes, which is pretty great. But I don't think it's organized still. I think it still depends on each production. It depends on the kind of film you're doing. It depends on many things.
Do you feel that there is a need for an industry-wide movement, possibly to bring that in? Because I think it's very progressive of the theatre group which initiated this, and I think we need to do that. It can't be something that is demanded by the actors themselves. It's something that has to come from the people making the films, saying that, look, we want to keep our sets safe. We want to have no unnecessary controversy, unless, of course, it's going to sell the movie and they just decide that kind of controversy is good for it, because, I mean, that's really twisted. But I was asking you whether you think it's time for a industry-wide movement which can be initiated by the producers.
Absolutely. I think it's very important. And I think that it's important that each production house takes that responsibility and says, okay, this is what we're going to do to ensure this doesn't happen.
Because it's a fairly unequal bargaining scenario at any given point of time. Because I would perceive that the actors feel that they are substitutable, that they can, if they make it too difficult, they can look elsewhere, right? And that's not fair. I mean, if you're going to look at a particular skill set, you should just make it comfortable for that skill set. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, Kalki, what was your first encounter with the law? When's the first time you really engaged? Were you, like Srinivasan Jain was telling us that he was pulled over once with his girlfriend. What about you?
So I went to jail when I was 3.
No, now it's coming out.
No, my encounters with the law would probably be, I don't know if this counts, but I remember having this terrible anxiety when I would travel abroad as a kid, because I had a French passport.
Yeah.
And so there was this constant thing of like they would question me, and my parents used to send me in my teenage years to my grandparents alone as an unaccompanied minor. So then I would be traveling alone, and then I would get this immigration officer who's always very serious, and asks them, why do you live in India? What are you doing here? And all of that.
Yeah.
Get very anxious about it. And then many times, because I would land in Chennai, I would just speak in Tamil. And then I would see a big smile come.
Yeah. I can imagine that.
So, I remember that.
I think fame would have made sure now that those questions aren't asked? Or do they still get asked?
Yeah. I mean, there's still that straight-faced immigration officer. But I think that, there's also that thing, Jawani hai, Diwani mein.
Yeah. So, I heard this, and I can't believe everything I read on the net, so maybe you can clear this up for us. There are different accounts of your family's role with the Eiffel Tower. Now, was he your great-grandfather or was he not?
So, actually, Maurice Koechlin, if I'm not mistaken, is my great-grandfather's brother.
Okay.
Great-grand-uncle.
Uncle, yeah.
So, it's our family only, but unfortunately, I don't get a discount when I go to the Eiffel Tower.
Okay, so I want to ask you about when you prepare for roles, right? What kind of effort do you put in? Because I remember a interesting exchange. I don't know how far this is true. It may be apocryphal, between Dustin Hoffman and Sir Larry Oliver on Marathon Man, where Dustin Hoffman explains how he really gets into the skin of the character, etc., and the old acting scenario, which I think from Strasbourg and stuff that he had picked up. And when it was Olivier's turn, he said, "Why do you bother with all that, my boy? Why don't you just act?" So, there are these two extremes that you see. Where do you really pitch yourself? Because I think you took on an extremely challenging role in Margarita with a Straw.
Yeah.
and to think that one of the previous main movie versions of dealing with that kind of an issue was Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot. I mean, did you watch the film, or did you deliberately not watch the film? And how do you deal with preparing for characters like that?
No, I watched every film I could find. There's a great Korean film called Oasis.
Yeah.
There's My Left Foot. The Sessions, which is about
yeah
gives sexual therapy.
Yeah.
Disability. So yeah, I watched as much as I could, researched as much as I could. But really, what really made me, I think, like what really gave me all the help I needed was Malini, who's my director's cousin who has cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
And sitting with her, with her in a wheelchair and being with her all the time and actually going out in society with her. So we would go to restaurants, we'd go watch movies, and I'd really get to see how difficult it is for the disabled, with no access, no structure in place, even in so-called disabled-friendly places like a cinema, where it was like, yes, this has an access, and then the last 3 steps into the theater, she would need to be carried. Plus, just the fact, because of the fact that there's no infrastructure in place, the invisibility of the disabled, the fact that most people don't know how to deal with a disabled person, so they just infantilize them. How are you? Like they must have, they only understand it as one thing, and they don't understand that this person might be, completely comprehensive mentally, but just physically disabled. So, yeah, it was a whole journey that I took with Malini that really made the difference. 6 months before the film.
Okay, so I'm imagining that you must be inhabiting these characters for a large part of your life during that period. Is there any specific character in all the films that you've done that you found it particularly hard to let go of once you were done?
Well, with Margarita, I was very happy. I remember the day I finished. It was on a beach in what's that island just off New York? I forget. Anyway,
Liberty. Not Liberty Island.
The one that's kind of creepy with like a theme park. Anyway, so we finished the last shot, sunset on the beach, and I just jumped off the wheelchair because I'd been on that wheelchair for 2 months.
Oh my God.
And it was, it had taken a toll physically, mentally on me. So I don't know, for me, I feel that I carry bits and pieces of all the characters afterwards, in terms of how it affects my life, how I look at people with that situation, or, it makes me more, interested in life and the people around me. But I don't find myself like staying up at nights afterwards. I really don't. I'm trying to think if there was a role during the shoots, when I was doing Ribbon, for example. The film, in many ways, was very personal for me, choosing that film, because it's about child abuse, and so I remember just staying up at nights and being very concerned about the little girl who was playing my daughter, because as a child actor, we don't want to expose her to something that she's too young to understand. She was 3 years old. Yet we need to make some very compromising scenes where she's lifting her skirt up and things like that. So I remember feeling very disturbed and becoming very close to to her because of this. I spent a lot of time with her outside of set, just being comfortable with her so that she felt safe around me. So it took a toll during that time. But I can't say that I stay like that afterwards. I actually find it quite freeing to be done with a character.
There are lots of insecurities that one finds in professions which are very competitive, right? I find that at the bar very often, that you prefer not to talk about other people's success. You prefer not to encourage others, and that happens a lot. Um, I've seen that particularly among women at the bar. At least that's a perception that I have. Women lawyers. My wife is a lawyer as well, and I get to see that I don't hear women really encouraging others. When they're asked that is there a lawyer you would recommend, the women lawyers are recommending male colleagues' names. They're not recommending women names. And I thought it was actually quite pleasant to see this recent show which you and Karina did together, because so many people are just happy to talk about imagined rivalries, insecurities, all sorts of issues among actors. I have no clue whether they have talked about you and Karina in the same respect, but I think it's very nice to see two people who have had different journeys in the same profession deal so comfortably with each other, joke about becoming mothers and stuff like that. Do you find insecurity in your profession something that's difficult to deal with? And if you do, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a natural, side, I think, to feel a bit like you're missing out on something if somebody else has gotten a role.
Yeah.
Um, there is that even my actor friends that I know, we always have this. We have these conversations where we're like, how did she get the role? And sometimes I feel, even even if I don't deserve it because I don't have the right look, because considering how I look, I can't be in everything. I'm like, but you should have gotten it. She shouldn't have gotten it because you're more talented. So we do have that side, but I don't think it's very healthy. And I think that um, it comes from the fact that Bollywood is a popularity contest. It is about who's the newest face right now, and not so much about talent always. And so that makes people more insecure, because if you know you're talented, you should be getting the merit for it, right? You should be getting the work for it. But in our
Yeah.
industry, it's not the fact. There are some very, very talented people who have gotten their due very late in life, or haven't gotten their due, and that's what makes us insecure. Um, um, Having said that, I think that the way I deal with it is the fact that I am different, and that's my strong point. That yes, I'll miss out on a lot of things because of that, but it also means there's certain roles that are unique to me that nobody else will be able to do. So what is it that I can give that no one else can give? Is what I try to focus on.
Do you feel that even in theater, when you've done theater, do you feel that level of insecurity? Because I'm sure there's so much talent, and all the great actors that we've seen have had so much to do with their origins in theater. Do you feel that there's
So
greater security because you come from there?
um, I can't say, because now I'm a celebrity. It's become very easy for me, in the sense
Yeah.
that people want a celebrity because theater is even harder to sort of run
Yeah.
financially. But I do hear it from my friends who are in theater,
Yeah.
that I know who are sensing that competition even in theater, because many people also it's like a step up to Bollywood, right?
Yeah.
Starting in theater. So
Yeah.
yes, I do see it in the younger generation who's doing theater as well. Absolutely. I don't think we're better human beings in theater.
Um, this I've come across the podcast you're doing with the or you have just finished the second season of My Indian Life.
Yeah.
Have you? What is the motivation behind that? Why did you explore doing that?
I didn't want to do it. I remember, because I was too busy. Somebody, some email came in about podcasts. I sort of just put it aside. I didn't even look at it, and then it just kept coming in my inbox. This email, and
No.
John Mannell, who's the man behind this podcast from the BBC, was very insistent until I finally read and looked at it properly, and I just really loved the list of people that there was in that first season, and the fact that everyone was from different walks of life in India, um, and it is a very changing and complex country, and this generation gap, where we have certain ideas and taboos, but then we have young people doing completely the opposite thing. So yeah, I thought it would be really great to explore it, and I've really enjoyed it. So now we're also doing third season. I think we're going to keep going with this for a while.
Okay, fantastic. It's fantastic work. Um, you've chosen Sappho as your daughter's name.
Yeah.
And it's a famous Greek poetess. I don't even know why we say poetess and actress anymore,
Yeah,
but that's that's what we say. And I think poetry has been so important and integral for you. Now, in 15 years' time, when Sappho is a 15 and a half year old girl, in the India that you see for Sappho, what exactly would be your top 3 things that you would want to have changed by then?
Wow. Oof. This is a scary thought. She's going to be 15? Ah!
In 15 years' time.
3 top things I would want to change.
I mean, for her particularly, I'm just saying from the point of view of a 15 and a half year old girl.
Yeah, I mean, immediately the thing that comes to mind is safety. Safety, the issue of safety. If she wants to go out, if she wants to, wherever she wants to go, she needs to feel safe. I don't think that's the case now for women. Secondly, love. You know, if she wants to bring a girl home, that shouldn't be an issue at school or anywhere else.
You have named her appropriately for that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And thirdly, third one would be, this is asking for a lot, but to be able to take a swim in the Bombay coastline.
Oh.
You know, like to have cleaned up I think pollution is just the biggest issue right now. For India.
Are you facing a lot of pollution in Bombay?
Yeah. I mean, before the lockdown, we were competing with Delhi in terms of air pollution. Our beaches are in a terrible shape. Our ocean is unswimmable. It's black. So, and you know, you keep hearing about these turtles getting washed up and stories of, you know, sea animals getting destroyed. It's a very dire situation.
Yeah. So our government has come out with a draft notification that they're going to implement, which is going to just ensure that it becomes much worse, because now you can set up projects and then get clearances for them. So I know Bombay has been facing the problem with what they're doing with the metro and the bridge that they're setting up, etc. But and for a city which has already faced a lot of problem with reference to clean water and clean air, I think Bombay has a little advantage because it's on the coast. But otherwise, it's also going down. I mean, we look at PM 2.5 levels over the last few years, and it has, like you said, been going south for Bombay. So I think we've got a bit of respite because of this COVID situation. I want to round up with asking you one small thing, Kalki. I think many of you choose to have your presence on social media because I think there is something to say. And our co-producer of this show was in fact telling us that you're the only person that she follows on Instagram because of the kind of content that you put out. Apparently, I mean, for those who follow you, you are a very good curator of content. You put out really good stuff that people like to see and read. But Twitter is also such a morass of people coming out and saying really, really vile things and really being harsh. You know, it's a funny thing in India that if a woman says something that you disagree with, you threaten rape. If a guy says something that you don't like, you threaten his mother and his sister with rape. So you always come back to the woman for some bizarre reason. Do you think it may be time for us to have a specific kind of regulation or law to protect women from this kind of content online?
Absolutely. I mean, recently we just started a campaign. friends of mine from the industry have started a campaign which I signed, petition India against abuse, and it's exactly this. How if you can do this in online, I mean, you couldn't get away with it in real life if that was me. So why are you getting away with it in online? So because that also promotes that kind of culture to happen and to become normal. To just insult someone about rape or death. So absolutely, it's time that I think laws and those working on internet laws really sort of work together to stop this happening.
Kalki, we have dragged you away from your lovely little daughter for long enough, and I want to thank you so much, despite the internet disturbances, for coming here and sharing your thoughts online. And Casual Conversations is so happy to once again engage with a cerebral celebrity. If I say that 5 times, I won't get it right.
It's a good one. It's a good one for my acting warm-ups.
Tongue twisters. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kalki, for this.
Well, it's been a pleasure, really. It's been lovely talking. Have a good
day. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye. See.